I just wanted to first say that I am really, really honored and happy to be here today and to share my insight on prostitution and sex work. Gail Dines is one of the first women that I met when I started doing this work about 30 years ago. I think I met Gail though about within the last 25. I was very impressed by Gail. She was like the Lone Ranger to me. She was out there speaking about pornography at a time when people definitely didn't want to hear about it. And they still don't. They still don't want to hear about it. What makes porn so difficult, I think, to get the point across as to its harms and what it's really about is because it's legal. And people have this tendency that whenever they hear that something is legal, they just think it's not that bad. Why would it be legal? If it's a bad thing for you, and we know there's a lot of bad things for you. But I myself am a survivor, and I became involved in stripping as a young woman. Stripping is also illegal and considered harmless. However, stripping is a stepping stone into prostitution. And I like to call strip clubs the welcome center for sex buyers, pimps, and drug dealers. Any man who wants to do whatever he wants to do with women. I say that he has a smorgasbord of women to choose from when he comes to these stripping clubs. The majority of girls in high schools that I speak with about the issue of prostitution, they look forward to graduating. What they tell me is they want to become a stripper. Things are so changing in our world today, and they're changing fast. Because for me, when I ask them, well, why would you want to be a stripper? And they, like many of us, have believed so many of the lies and the myths about the harm of sex trafficking and prostitution, stripping. All of that is under the same umbrella, pornography. But there's a lot of lies and a lot of myths out there that we're all aware of that people really want to believe, which, will bring me into talking about sex work. But as a founder of an organization, I helped many women and girls for over 20 years to escape prostitution. And it's only, I want to tell you that I'm really passionate about this issue. I'm passionate about it, for one, because I've been there, done that. And I really see the impact just on myself. I understand how it is something that you just can't stop thinking about. It comes up when you least expect it, the things that have happened to you. And this is the problem with why so many women, they just can't heal. They have such a difficult time getting to the core, the root of this problem, because they, like me, believed that when I got involved in stripping, I always thought, oh, this is, I will someday, be able to maybe get off into modeling and just, do some different things, acting and so forth. A lot of young girls really do believe that. And here they are. The one thing they're definitely getting off into right now is OnlyFans, which I know somebody's going to talk about that. But there are so many avenues right now, many more than there were, 20, 30 years ago for women to get off into the sex trade. But yes, stripping is a stepping stone, and people really need to understand that. Because these young girls, these little girls that are in high school, they don't understand the big picture, the dynamics. And she could be your daughter, somebody that you know. And if she does get involved in that, it's the beginning of a whole life change for her. I thought I was going to pay my way through college when I started stripping, and it was totally opposite. That never happened. But I know I'm not going to focus on that right now. But I fear for the generations that are coming up. What do they have really to look forward to? And throughout the last 30 years, there are just so many, I'm telling you, girls under the age of 18 that I've talked to that are getting involved in the sex trade. There's lies. I talked about the lies and the myths. There are so many myths and lies about the sex trade that are designed to hurt women and girls. And what it does is it keeps us in a place of total inequality, and it keeps us trapped in this vicious cycle of abuse, sexual abuse and misuse. And one of the most common lies that has been around forever is that prostitution is the oldest profession. And I say this all the time, but I like to say that it's the oldest oppression against women and girls. And I know that little girls do not daydream about becoming prostituted women when they grow up. They don't. The only reason they would daydream about that is that there's something happening in their house, in their home. Something is going on that just isn't right. And I have met them young girls as well. But I actually heard about this, that prostitution being the oldest profession when I was a teenager. And that was way back when. I won't say how far back, but that was way back when. You wouldn't think, you know what I mean? That people were talking about it back then, being a profession. And now we're talking about sex work. Is it sex work? Let's talk about that just for a minute. Sex work means exactly what it says. Sex is work. That's what the sex workers want us to believe, that sex is work. It's like a job. It's a job like, any other job. And I tell people, that you really have to sit down and think about this for just a minute. You have to really rationalize it, analyze it. At least I did. When you're involved in the life, you're so used to just being there and doing it. You don't think about, all of that. And a lot of people don't. They just believe the first person that says this is sex work. Where you think about what sex is and you think about what work is. And I just want to really analyze that with you all just for a minute, because I know some people understand it. Some people get it, but then you leave and you talk to somebody who says to you, oh, sex work. No, that's what it is. Sex work isn't bad. It's not so bad, but it really is. I compare sex work. There's an activity that I'm going to talk about in just a second here that I do with the women. Because when women come into or have came into Breaking Free, or I still go around and do groups at different places, when I do these groups, one of the things that I try to help women to understand, because they too are calling prostitution sex work. And so one thing that does, it takes off some of the heavy off you. It makes you maybe not feel so bad about what's happening to you, what's going on with you, because you really do want to believe that it's some form of work. It's like maybe working at McDonald's, being a teacher. I say, a doctor, a lawyer, you go to work, you work your job, you go home, you go to bed, you get up, and the routine comes over again. You go to teach, you go to be a waitress, whatever it is you are. Then you get a paycheck at some point and you just continue your routine. Now, you might get a little frustrated, a little tired, a little fed up with different things that are happening on your job. But eventually you just move on. You move on. It's not leaving a heaviness all the time on you. But when you talk about sex work, do you want this job? It's a little bit different. Sex work can't be defined as a job or work. And let me tell you why that is. The inherent harm of being bought and sold is the actual sex act. That's what the inherent harm is of sex, so-called work. And I try to get individuals who have never been involved in the life, and I know a lot of women have never, ever been involved in prostitution. So what I do is I try to help women think about what is this really like? Because lots of times people think, oh, when I've done presentations and stuff, people kind of giggle a little bit when I tell them what the type of work I do, that we're educating people that prostitution is violence against women and girls. It's harmful. But in their minds, they're thinking, Having sex with somebody, that's not so bad. What you have to think about is having sex not with your lover. It's with 1, 2, 5, maybe 10 people a day. And people have talked about that in many different ways. See, sex work is not like having sex with your lover. I mean, your husband, somebody that you really care about. It's not like having sex with that individual. See, men don't come to women in prostitution because they want to make love. Let me put it like that. They don't want to make love. They want to have sex their way, which is any way they want to have it. It can be on any way, and there's a whole lot of different ways, but it's usually some kind of a brutal way. So they're not coming to her for the, I just want to, this would be a good scene, making love with you, like I love you and all of this. I tell women, if you're married or whatever, you got your boyfriend or whoever this is, tell him to start having sex with you 5 times a day, maybe 6, 7, if you can, and tell him to do that for a week or 2, every day. Now you know him, you see him every day, but something is going to happen at the end of that week. Might be the end of a couple of days for some, might be the end of 2 weeks. Something is going to go through your mind. Something doesn't feel right about this. Then replace that with a stranger, someone that you've never met, you don't know from Adam. See, that is what prostitution is. Can we put the activity up? So when I am with the women, what I do is I put this activity up. Can everybody see the activity? Okay. I put this activity up because I'm trying to help them understand about the realities of what they're involved in, because they come in to the program and they're blaming themselves for how they feel and for everything that has happened to them. They're saying, this is a job, like any other job. Why do I feel this way? And I'm talking about women who are in college, calling themselves, getting money to pay for college and buy things, women who are in it because they have to be, they're pimped, they're court ordered to the program, whatever, they're mixed up, they're confused about all of this because we call it sex work. We're calling it that, but we know that it is not sex work. So if I were here, if this were alive, I would have everybody sit down and answer some of these questions and talk aloud about them, because when you talk about them out loud, you feel it more. You understand it more. It goes up here a little bit deeper. And this helps the women to think through everything that's happened to them. So these questions are answers to some of the bolded things on here, the bolded words. These are the answers that the women gave. So, and I just want to kind of go through this quickly with you. But the position is streetwalker, escort, stripper. These are the positions that they have chosen. That's what they were involved in when they were in the light. And this is who the supervision, I ask them, well, who do you report to? Because we're trying to compare this job description to a real job. So you all think about, who do you report to right now on your jobs? Whatever it is you're doing. Some of you might be counselors out there, teachers, whatever. Who do you report to? They say they report to a man. You always a man. I've never seen it be a woman. A pimp, a sauna owner or manager, the owner of an escort service. Read this stuff and think about it. These are who they report to when they go to work. What is their work schedule? They say they work 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're on call as long as there's a trick out there. That's what they say. As long as there's a buyer, they're on call. Unlike legitimate jobs, prostituted women don't get sick time. They don't get vacation days and holidays. I'll tell you, I worked with a woman who worked in Nevada, and she got really extremely sick and couldn't work. And I asked her, well, what did you do? What happened? She said, well, what happened was the madam of the house, the rules are that you have to call your pimp. See, in the brothels, there's pimps. The women are referred, most of the women are referred by pimps. So anyway, the madam called her pimp and told him she had a really bad sore throat. No, she was sick. She didn't have sore throat, but she was just real sick. And so she said, do you want me to let her off work for the day? And what he told her was, no, tell her to use her mouth. So what did she do? She ended up doing head all during her sickness. That's what her pimp told the brothel to do with her. So this, when you compare it to your job, your work schedule, do you work 24 hours a day? You know, you got to go in all around the clock. I don't think so. And if you do, you might do some overtime. But if she has to get up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because there's a trick that wants her, that's what she's got to do. And the duties, just as you read the duties, this is what the ladies say that they've had to do. Read the duties. Having sex, giving blowjobs, hand jobs, everything, flat backing, stripping, freak tricks, all of this. And some women mention that they say they'd rather steal to get the money than to schooling. And I've heard that on many, many occasions. Some women mention talking as one of their duties. If the John pays her to talk dirty to him, usually while he masturbates now. This is sex to him, even if it isn't to her. The same is true of men who pay prostituted women to whip them or urinate on them. This is a job description. Can you imagine going into work and your boss tells you, hey, you know what? I'm going to masturbate and I want you to read whatever it is to me, read this to me or talk to me while I'm masturbating. You can't even imagine that. The women have to do this on a daily basis, not with one, but with many different guys. And this is called sex work. Sex work. Can you move that up just a little? What do they make? How much money do women make? And how do they get paid? Cash, drugs, clothes, jewelry, a place to stay. A lot of money passes through a prostituted woman's hands. And it's important to help her examine, however, how much of it she actually has control over. Because what happens is whatever money she makes, believe me, it's not going to stay with her. She usually has a quota that she has to make with her pimp. And that quota can range anywhere from, $500 a day to $1,000 a day. But you just have to look at this. What if you go to work, your real job, and instead of getting your paycheck, you're given clothes or jewelry? Oh, this week, I'm just going to give you this necklace, fake gold necklace, what have you. We can't imagine stuff like that. But this is what sex work, what they want to say is called sex work. What about the benefits? What happens if somebody rapes you on your job, your real job? You have a case. You have a case that you can take to court. You can sue. That is a job. That's part of her job as a woman in prostitution. She has no legal rights at all in retaliation to the job of prostitution. The fact that she is a prostituted woman makes it almost impossible to get help from the police. And I talk to different programs right now, and it's an unfortunate thing, but in some of these states the police are the perpetrators. I've heard women come to me at different times and say that he said that if I do this, he won't take me to jail. But the opposite happens. What about the expenses? You have to pay your pimp. Strippers, I mean, there's mileage, there's different things that you have to pay out. In all of this, it takes money, but I'm telling you, the pimp will make sure that the expenses are taken care of. But what he'll also do is make sure that you're not seeing any of it. So what is the dress code for prostitution? What is the dress code for a real job? I mean, we wear our suits, we wear just casual clothes. Some of us have to get a little bit more fancy on depending on the job that we have, maybe an attorney or what have you. But what is the dress code for a woman that's involved in prostitution? Can we pull this up, please? Her dress code is nude. When she is performing the sex act, she is nude. She wears nothing. Strippers eventually take everything off that they have on. And so what I do, again, is I tell the women, now, if you're working at McDonald's or you're working wherever it is as an advocate somewhere, would they ever tell you to come in with nothing on or get there and take your clothes off? You don't have to worry about those things on a real job. On a job that you have to go to work at and put X amount of hours in a day. That is not the reality of what work is about. So when we say sex work, we're given this idea, again, that it really truly is legitimate work that we're doing. But that's not the reality of it. What about the place of employment? Where do you work? Some of you work in office buildings. Some of you can work from home right now. Place of employment for a woman involved in prostitution is in a car, in an alley, in the bushes, in a hallway at a hotel, in a public restroom. You have to imagine this. We have to imagine this. Sex work, again, it gives that belief that all of this that we're reading here is really work. And it's far from work. Okay, you can take that down. I think there's one of these that everybody can get. Sex work, I keep talking about that because it really infuriates me. I'm not a sex worker. I never have been, and never would be. It's never been. I mean, I've never ever really thought of it as work. I called it sex abuse. I called it rape. But it definitely is not sex work. And I think that as long as we continue to call it what it is not, that the generations to come are going to be tricked. They're going to be damaged by this. You know what I mean? Because like I say right now, there's so many avenues to get involved in the sex industry that by the time my great-grandchildren are grown, they're going to think this is just a normal thing. They're going to think it's a normal thing to do when it's really not. And I just want to quickly go over just a couple of the impact of what this does to women. There's a high rate of exposure to STIs. There's a high risk of pregnancies, homicides. So many women that I've worked with have been killed. Injuries from repeated physical attacks. Organ damage from drug and alcohol addiction. The other part here is many of the women, they have criminal records. Difficulty finding housing, difficulty finding employment, and child custody issues. Many of them, especially the women of color, the Black and brown women, they lose their children quite quickly to child protection services. They have difficulty establishing intimate relationships, educational deprivation, isolation from mainstream society. These are all the effects, the things that women can not ever change many of the times. Loss of career building years, missed normal socialization process. And psychological effects is clinical depression. That's a big one. Clinical depression, dissociative disorders, drug and alcohol abuse. Women say that they cannot even do the sex act unless they're high. They want to be high during that act. Does that sound like your job? Sex work. Sex work. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Those are just some of the effects of being involved in the life of prostitution. And I just, I think about this all the time and I'm like, okay, so what, if we don't call it sex work, we say prostitution right now, but I call the women prostituted. I say they're prostituted women. And what does that mean? That means that something has been done to them. When they go into that room with that individual, it's him that is doing everything to them. And he is the one that should be held accountable for what he does. But most places the women are always held accountable. They go to jail, they do everything that I had read off here. They suffer the consequences, they lose their children. What is our role here in all of this? Somebody talked about language and how important language is, and it really is important. When we say sex work, we need to understand clearly, and I hope that just going through this little fast activity kind of helped you to see what women have to go through on a daily basis, and that you understand the difference in some ways between sex work and being prostituted. There's a big difference between the two of them. There's a statement that the federal government put out, which I really do like. It says, when you're talking about this issue, they say to look beneath the surface. And I just want to end it by saying that's what we have to do. We have to look beneath the surface and look at everything around it that surrounds us, and how it is all about violence against women and girls. It's about keeping women at a different place, putting us in a different space than anybody else. We have to look beneath the surface and we have to be able to stand up and say, this is not sex work. It has nothing to do with sex work at all. Thank you.